I spent years building the kind of life that I thought would make me happy and fulfilled. And along the way, I think it did. There were definitely moments of it. But when I eventually got to where I thought I wanted to be, it just it just wasn't enough. And and there was something that just kept wanting to drive further. And when you've spent your whole life building everything, optimizing everything around performance and achievement and success, you you don't get to keep going on. Eventually, there's a reckoning, and for me, it happened just kind of in one really big year. About a decade ago, I became the person I thought would make me happy, and he didn't. And I suddenly found myself with everything collapsing around me that I really wanted, and I didn't know how to make sense of it at the time. And it's taken a long time to unpack it and figure out how I got there and what happened. But I wanted to share parts of the journey here because I think I didn't have a lot of people to talk to or to share this with. And I don't know how many people are going through things like this right now, where maybe the environment they're in isn't supportive of, like maybe you're not in a space where your company's supportive of what you're doing or trying to do, or you've built something that, you know, you've kind of got to a size and scale that's great on the outside, but and it checks off all the boxes, but it doesn't feel good on the inside or doesn't feel whole or fulfilling. Or maybe just starting out and you're not sure where to go. Or you're a parent who's been at home for a long time. You know, I think there's lots of points where we hit this kind of question about meaning or purpose in our lives. And it doesn't, you know, it's often at mid-career, and that's why we call it a midlife crisis and things like that. But it doesn't always hit then. It's kind of, it can hit at any time. And so I wanted to share some things that I found over the last decade as I've tried to figure out what happened and how to live going forward with something different. And for a while, you know, I didn't quite get it. Like I started to repeat the same patterns. But if there's anything I've learned, it's how to spot patterns. I became really good at it. And probably not good enough to stop all the kinds of things that unraveled. But maybe there's a lesson in those too. Just pursuit. And I think this is a big part of the lesson, that the pursuit is what gets in the way. It's the obstacle. The search that we have ends up becoming so consuming that it masks what's already here and what might be right in front of us. So as I started to unpack what had happened, you know, suddenly in a year I'd lost my marriage. I was now 5 hours away from my kids. And, you know, for all good reasons, nothing, can't go back and change it. But all these things had happened, and I'd lost my job, and I was in debt, and just all kinds of terrible things, choices that I had made. You know, I don't blame anyone else for this. But there were things that I had pursued, things that I'd wanted that I had never really questioned, I guess. And so when I started to try to unwind what had happened or replay what had happened, I suppose, I started to figure out that maybe all these things that I was pursuing weren't really mine. And I'd read some books and things like that, and I think there were clues everywhere, but suddenly I wanted to figure it out myself. And so I started this kind of big journey just to kind of take a look at every single thing and figure out where it came from. So where did these shoulds and shouldn'ts come from that I was now pursuing? Or things that felt even more strong than that, like a must. Like, where were they coming from? And sure, maybe some of them I wanted. Maybe some of them weren't mine. And it was really helpful because it allowed me some space to start to listen to the voice inside my head, or the voices inside my head, and start to understand which ones were really things that felt true to me, felt good inside here, that felt connected to some kind of skill, talent, mission, purpose, something like that. Don't want to give it too many, don't want to try and narrow down a name yet, but let's just call it that. Like, what felt good that way, and what was more trying to meet expectations or competing, comparing, trying to fit in. Fitting in was a big part of kind of growing up. So I think that was part of it as well. So as I spent time trying to look at that, it was really helpful because I got some space and I got to start to see where all these things had stacked up. And what was not the outcome I was expecting, but what happened along the way was, as I subtracted these things from my life that no longer mattered as much to me anymore, I suddenly had so much more room for the things that did. More time for the things I wanted to work on, time with family, yeah, all those sorts of things. And it was time for health and time for meditation and time for all these things that I said I would get around to doing one day. I started to do because I had more space for them. And I started to realize that subtraction was this really interesting thing. Yes, physical subtraction to a certain extent, like spending less time on certain things, but there was a psychological subtraction as well, like not minding as much, not caring as much. And I found that was actually a really freeing part of this, a chance to give up sort of the mental, psychological weight of doing all these things. And that's what led me to kind of look at this thing and realize that the pursuit was really the obstacle that was standing in the way. And like a sculptor, you could chop away at your existing life and figure out that statue, that figure, whatever, that thing, that essence that was you in all of it. So not something that you need to kind of blow up your whole life for. And certainly I, having gone through it, wouldn't recommend it to anyone. It was like I ripped the band-aid off kind of thing. But you can start doing this with your own life now, just to take a look at some of the things where you spend time and where you leak energy, and start to look at those trades that you're making and see which ones are really yours, which ones you've inherited from somebody else. Could be mentors, could be parents, could be culture, tradition, countries, workplaces, all kinds of things. So take a look and see, because if you're finding that you're running pretty hard and can't seem to get a break, or life doesn't seem to have as much meaning as you hoped it did or would at this stage, or maybe you're in transition or starting out, I think these are all, they have thresholds to them. You're crossing some kind of state and asking yourself these questions about which things are really yours, which things are really from somebody else, will help you make the kinds of choices that'll reinforce what makes you happy. So yeah, I'm going to share more stories like this and unpack some of the ways in which it's helped me and the work I do now. So I hope you'll stick around and catch the next one of these. Thanks.